Creating a new event. From the Events and Functions tab, click on the New button. From the New button, you'll be able to give the event a name, a title, an overview, which is displayed in email templates, as well as list views, link it to an organizing entity, and propose a stage. The event name is primarily for internal use. This is what will be displayed on reports, dashboards, as well as views. For today's session, we'll call this test. The event title is what will be displayed to the delegates or the end users. This is what will pull into your microsites, your emails, as well as any other content that's client facing. So we're going to call this testing as well. Generally, these two will have the same name. You can also give it an overview. This is generally a description of that event. We then link an organizing entity. Remember, an organizing entity is the organization in which this event will be linked to. We can then choose a stage. Because the stage is still in planning, we'll set it to planning and we'll click save. Once we've saved our event, the first thing we'll notice is that we are not ready to go live. As we can see, each one of these indicators are currently set to orange. We will only be able to go live once we have green indicators displayed. We're going to complete each indicator step by step. If you need any further information, please hover over each one of these images where you can see a bit more information. To start, we'll start with the schedule. The schedule of the event is when the event is going to take place. In order to complete the schedule, there's a couple of things we need to do. First, we will need to set a registration cutoff. This will not allow users to register for the event after the cutoff date and time. If our event was taking place on Tuesday, I might want to set the registration cutoff on Monday midday. That will allow my event management team to get all of their seating, etc., sorted out. If this is a virtual event, you can set the cutoff at the end of the event, which will allow people to register while the event is taking place. Our event start date will then be on the 15th, and we will give it a time. The event will be starting at 9 a.m. It will be a same day event, so it will be completed a bit later on in the day. Before we can move forward with this, we do need to insert a time zone. EventSpark has pre-inserted time zones linked that can also be customized by your administrator. We're going to link the New York time zone to this particular event. Once we have done that, we can save the record. As you can see, the schedule is now complete. Now we need to complete microsite, comms, venue, as well as setup. I'm going to do the comms first just because that's a really simple component. You can add comms rules by simply clicking on the comms rule button. What are comms rules? As per previous sessions, comms rules are automated instructions that the system will follow when an individual registers for an event. EventSpark has preloaded comms rules. However, you can add your own. I'm going to choose a preloaded and I'm going to set it to the waiting list component. What this will do for our event is it is going to preload rules that will be automatically emailed to your delegates once they register, cancel, awaiting feedback, etc. Comms rules will be covered in more detail in a following session. Once we've added our comms rules, we can just refresh the page. Now our event has a schedule, it has comms rules, but there's a few other things that we need to add in order for the comms to be sendable. So let's move down the screen and complete the rest of the information. We need to have a look at how our event is going to be hosted. As we can see here, this current event is open enrollment and invitation. That means that clients can be invited to this event, but they can also enroll through an online registration form that EventSpark will create. We can decide whether we want to allow pre registration, whether we want to allow waiting lists. Once a delegate has registered, do we want to allow that delegate to make changes to their record? If so, we could choose the update details. If we want to allow them to update and cancel, we could select that option. Verification is two-step authentication. Basically, if somebody is invited to an event, they will need to insert a verification code before they can view their details. We'll go into this in a bit more detail in another session. When scrolling down, I will notice that there are some venue information, and we can see that venue is one of the components that we have to complete. So we're going to complete our venue. First of all, you'll notice that there are two different venue lookups. The first one is venue, the second one is virtual. Virtual venues will be used if you would like to link your Zoom calls, particularly to EventSpark. This supports Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars. In today's session, we're just going to be linking a physical venue. I have one preloaded. We can then select the capacity and if we're going to have an overbooking percentage. The virtual event details are not necessary because we are not hosting a virtual event. Host and communication details are, however, required. Once we complete the host and communication details, that will help us move past the comms rules component. So what we're going to need to do is have a host. This host can either be a person, an individual, or an organization. So what we're going to do here is the host for today's training will be myself. I will be a trainer, or I could be an event manager, or I could be any one of the above. You can insert the host email. This will essentially be linked back to emails. We can then also put a host phone number, and most importantly, we're going to need an org-wide email address. The org-wide email address is super important because this is what our automated emails will be sent from. If we want automated communications to be sent, we need to click yes. Let's save our record. As we can see, comms rules are now completed. This is because we allowed automated communication and we put in our org-wide email. Keeping in mind that one org can have multiple emails. Please ask your administrator if you need those set up. We also notice that our venue is almost ready to go live. We're almost ready to go live with our event. We just have two more components, and these will be quick. We need to understand what those are. There are two components that we need to complete: the event and marketing, as well as the microsite setup. I will be going in a bit of detail for each of these. Firstly, you would need to understand a little bit about your Salesforce environment. You will need to know if you are using leads, you will need to know if you are using contacts, and if you would like those items to be synced. Generally, this setup can be done by an administrator who knows a little bit more about the environment. What this basically indicates is when a delegate is created in our system, remember, delegates are the individuals that are going to register for our events. Once those delegates are created, do we want to create leads in our system? And when do we want to have those leads created? Do you want them created on registration? Do you want them created on attendance? or even do you want them on survey completion? If you do not want these loaded at all, you can simply click never. If you do know what needs created, then you don't need to worry about duplication rules. If you do want leads created, then it's a good thing to consider your duplication rules. The first item will create and update leads that exist. The next one will not create or update leads that exist. What happens if we are using contacts? Do we want to link this if there is a duplicate contact or not? Or do we just want to ignore it altogether? Next, we have lead source. This is a text field. Keeping in mind that your lead sources could change frequently. To keep this as a dropdown can be tough to administer. I'm going to insert test. We can then link to underlying campaigns. If you don't know what a campaign is in Salesforce, it essentially is a tracking tool that helps us work out ROI as well as lead conversion. Again, very similar to leads and contacts, we can decide how we want these to sync. Do we always want to link to a campaign? Do we never want to link to a campaign? Or do we want to link to a campaign once somebody's completed registration or attendance? I'm going to leave that as never for now. In one of our previous sessions, I covered the up and coming events list. This is the list that can be embedded on your website, behind a community, or the link can be sent to your clients, where they can get a view of all the up and coming events due. This comes in two different forms, either a calendar view or a panel view. If you do not want this event to be displayed on your up and comings events, maybe it's a private event. You can set that to no. I'm going to leave that as yes for now. Lastly, we can decide if we want leads, contacts, or both to sync. What this basically allows you to do is, if you have field mappings, you can have those field mappings sync across. I'm going to leave that as do not sync changes for now. If you want to insert a cost center, budgets, and approve budgets, this is specifically for reporting purposes and bears no fundamental impact on our system. Scrolling down to the microsite setup. The microsite is essentially the web page that your event will be hosted on. The microsite allows for the structure of the page. It inherits a theme, which gives it the look and the feel, and it displays a form, which is essentially where your customers will be capturing their data. Creating microsites on an event is very easy. Firstly, you'll need to change the status to active. You can then give a friendly URL name. What is a friendly URL name, you might ask? When hosting events on Salesforce microsites, you might see a common string, something like this, displayed for your events. Now, that's fine, but it doesn't give you any detail around your event. So generally, you're going to want to put the name of your event. You could put test. I'm going to put testing just as an example. You could put whatever you want, but keep in mind that this does need to be unique across all your different events. If it is not unique, it will notify you. Choose a template that one of your system administrators have set up. Choose a theme that one of your system administrators have set up. Remember, wherever you see recent, that just means it's going to show you what you've recently accessed. If you know that there are other themes that exist in the system, search for them. As you can see now, there's a lot more themes that are exposed to me. That goes for anything in Salesforce. Remember, we use standard lookups. When accessing a lookup, you essentially will be displayed recent items, but if you know that something else exists, search for it. Registration form I'm going to use one of my standard registration forms. I'm going to look for an attendance survey. And this is a great example. As you can see, I do not have any recent ones. So what do I do here? Simply search. No show survey. Again, I'm going to search. Fantastic. Lastly, like anything else in our system, we do have a couple of enhancement features that do not bear any logical update to the page, but allow you to basically filter out information. I.e., do we not want to display the venues tab? Maybe it's a virtual event and there's no reason to have a venues tab. Do we want to hide tickets? Do we want to hide the title? This is a popular option. Sometimes graphics designers create banners that include the title inside of the graphic page. For this instance, we are going to leave it displayed. Do we want to apply the default theme for our content, or do we not want to apply the theme? This is basically if our event managers or our graphics team have applied custom fonting. We're now going to save our event. And as you can see, all 5 of these indicators are green. Before we can go live with our event, there's a couple of additional things we might want to check. That will follow in our next instructional video.